Let us discuss passage number 4 of the paper, which is about SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. The passage here says that SMEs in the country face tremendous constraints which prevent them from scaling up, from growing. The consensus seems to be that, among other things, growth is hampered by the lack of capital. The evidence on bank credit and growth is very strong. Small enterprises that receive bank credit have grown 7 times as fast as those that did not. For medium enterprises, the difference in growth rates was more than twofold. Now, the reasoning is not difficult to fathom. Access to capital helps SME firms make larger investment, thereby enabling them to achieve faster growth. So this particular paragraph tells us that capital is important for growth. But the comparison of gross output to total input ratio shows interesting trends. Firms that did not have bank credit had much higher efficiencies. Now, how do we explain this? A possible reason could be that firms that obtain credit make suboptimal investments. In a sense, they seem to squander their capital. On the other hand, firms that have not obtained bank loans seem to handle capital with a lot of care. A poorly run firm is more likely to fail compared to firms that are efficient. A comparison of incidences of poor performance confirms this. SMEs with bank credit have a significantly higher incidence of poor performance. SME firms tend to be lax with external capital such as bank funds. On the other hand, when the firms put in valuable equity, they exercise more diligence and are able to extract a lot more return from a rupee. Now, so the question is not just about availability of credit, it is also about the return on credit. It says that simply increasing allocations to the SME sector is not the effective way to grow the sector. Creating institutional mechanisms that ensure most productive deployment of credit is what is essential. Now, what would it involve? So this particular last paragraph gives us some three reasons, three possibilities that what would it involve. The banks should take a more proactive approach in selecting better performing companies to whom they would provide loans. Secondly, the loan covenants should incentivize good performance. Third, setting up specific institutions tailor-made to the SME would be desirable. The operating context of SMEs differs significantly from that of larger firms. Lending institutions should factor that into their scheme of things. Now, while we acknowledge that there may be practical difficulties in traditional banking system to incorporate such changes, it is equally imperative that creative solutions be found. Setting up entities exclusively for SME would go a long way in addressing some of these issues. Consider the following statements. The only factor that determines the growth of SMEs is access to capital. Now, this is an incorrect statement because capital is just one of the things. It is not the only factor. This is given in the very first paragraph where it says, among other things, growth is hampered by lack of capital. So that means there are other things as well. This is not the only factor. So this can be very quickly eliminated. So you need to focus on, pay attention to words like mostly, always, only when you're answering the questions. Efficiency of a firm determines its success rather than the availability of capital to them. This is a correct statement if you refer to the third paragraph. Where it says that firms that did not have bank credit had much higher efficiencies. So we can say that efficiency of a firm determines its success rather than availability of capital to them. So this is correct, and therefore the answer will be option E. Equity financed firms are more likely to be efficient. This is correct if you refer to the line here. It says, on the other hand, when the firms put in valuable equity, they exercise more diligence and are able to extract a lot more return from a rupee. So equity finance firms are more likely to be efficient. Proper deployment credit is more important than allocation of credits. And this is again a correct statement. Refer to the line here where it says simply increasing allocation to the SME sector is not an effective way to grow the sector. Creating institutional mechanisms that ensure the most productive deployment is essential. So therefore, this is a correct statement, that proper deployment of credit is more important than mere allocation of credit. So both of these statements are correct. Therefore, the answer will be D. SME sector forms the backbone of Indian economy. Well, this is an incorrect statement. In the very first paragraph, it is given that SME employ over 44% of the workforce, contribute to over 40% of the exports, but account only for 17% of the country's GDP. Now, can you see the word but here? It brings in the factor of contradiction here. We cannot be sure that this sector forms the backbone of the economy or not, because of this word but here, because it says that it only accounts for 17% of the country's GDP. So therefore, it will not be safe to say that this is a correct statement. Statement 2 is also incorrect. The traditional banking system lacks skills and efficiency. The traditional banking system has been spoken about in the last paragraph. It says that there may be practical difficulties in the traditional banking system to incorporate such changes. However, it is equally imperative to do so. But it nowhere mentions that it lacks skills and is inefficient. It only says that it may be difficult, it may face practical difficulties in doing so, but we cannot say that it is not skillful or inefficient. Therefore, this is incorrect. 2. Thus, the correct option will be C. SMEs deserve more credit access as they have a different operating environment as compared to the larger firms. This is again an incorrect statement. The passage states that SMEs have a different operating environment as compared to the larger firms. However, this is not a reason for them to deserve access to more credit. So we cannot say that they deserve more credit only on this particular basis. So this is incorrect. As per the comparison of gross output to total input ratio, higher the bank credit, lower is the performance of the SME sector. This is again an incorrect statement. Why? Because the passage does not state that higher the credit, lower will be the performance. The degree of credit has not been discussed here. However, this particular statement discusses the degree of credit. The passage only discusses the availability of credit. You can refer to the line here which talks about this. The last line here, SMEs with bank credit have a significantly higher incidence of poor performance. Therefore, both these statements are incorrect, so the answer will be option C.